I want to talk about obviously that pivotal day in 1973 that obviously changed the course of your life forever. But can you paint a picture of your upbringing and who you were before that? I really want to hear about your childhood and your family growing up.
In my house, there were seven boys, and the magnitude of that day is the fact that I'm the only one alive today. And that's the emphasis of my life. That's what my family, that's they're amazed because I'm the oldest. And they always ask me, Dad, why do you think you're the only one alive? And I tell them because I had somewhere to go. Because if not, I wouldn't be alive today.
Right.
In the aspect of how my siblings died is very sad. Some involved in shootings, some involved in drugs, some involved in disease, and it's been painful.
Mm.
And, I mean, I was born in the Bronx, and we lived on Westchester Avenue in the Bronx, very tough area. And before that, my father would give me up for adoption.
Wow.
And so that in essence, when that happened, my mother met a man who he was a grocer. And what happened was my aunt took me into the supermarket or to the market, bodega, to do some shopping. And this guy was there, and he thought I was a cute little kid. And every time that my aunt went in there, he always like played with me.
Hmm.
And one day my mother came home from work. Oh, I'm sorry that my phone,
It's okay.
I'm trying to turn it off.
No problem.
And when my mother came home, all of a sudden, this guy happened to be passing by one day, that the grocer,
Hmm.
and he said to me, "Someday are you going to come by my house so we could play catch outside the house?" And my mother said, "Well, if you take him, because he didn't see her, if you take him, you're going to have to take me too." And they ironically would end up getting married, and he in turn adopted me.
Oh, wow. And so
And
he was a good influence in your life as a
he was
child?
he was a wonderful little Spanish man.
Mhm.
I mean, we never played catch because that wasn't his thing. He wasn't into sports at all. He was the little Spanish guy that you see at the bodegas.
Right.
You understand? And his whole life was about working.
But so
And
he meant well. He was a good man to you.
wonderful, wonderful man.
Mm.
However, I lived with the aspect of that my father had given me up for adoption and didn't see me, and for a long time really didn't care to see me.
Mhm.
He was just into his own thing, I guess. I try not to guess too much.
Yeah.
You know, uh, my mother was an incredible woman. When my parents first broke up, my father actually kidnapped me, took me to Cuba.
Wow.
Okay. And it took my mother 7 months to be able to go into Cuba and get me out. He was
Wow.
Cuban, she was Puerto Rican.
And
And
during this time, where were all your siblings?
so what happened was when she came back from Cuba, her brother and her moved in together, and 16 of us lived in this home.
Oh my goodness.
You understand what I'm saying? It's a very complicated story.
Yeah.
16 of us lived in the home, and seven of us were boys. All right. And so in essence, it was a wild, crazy time, if you can understand.
Hmm.
And the understanding of these adults who dealt with it, and because that was their way of survival,
Right.
and in essence, One day I ended up going to Yankee Stadium because I used to like to hang outside the park.
Hmm.
And this was 1973.
And wait, before you tell this story, had you ever been inside the park? Had you ever gone to a game?
Yes, I had gone to a game every once in a while, but it wasn't like my stepfather, like every once in a actually once gave me the money to go to the bleachers. And I sat in the bleachers and saw the game from out there. It was cool, but that wasn't an everyday occurrence. That happened one time.
Right,
But I would go to the stadium just to watch the players walk in and walk out. And I thought that that was the greatest thing in the world to see a Thurman Munson or Bobby Mercer and be able to say, "Hey, hi," that kind of stuff, you know?
right, right. And then up until this point, had you gotten in any trouble?
Uh, I was slick enough not to have gotten caught.
Okay.
At one time, I actually went to a Woolworths. You're probably too young to
Nope,
know
I
what.
know it. I grew up in Manhattan. I know Woolworths.
Okay. So there was a Woolworths, and I went and I actually was shoplifting. I got caught, and I shamefully say that I punched a security guy a couple of times to get loose and just ran, and I didn't get caught, so I didn't get into trouble.
Hmm.
And that was probably the worst thing that happened to me because then I thought I was invincible.
Right. I
Okay.
understand.
And so one day we're doing graffiti outside Yankee Stadium, something you definitely shouldn't be doing, especially at the cathedral.
Right.
And all of a sudden, a car jets onto the sidewalk, and two guys jump out. Everybody starts to scatter, and I trip over one of the guys, and I'm caught.
Mm.
I'm put into a holding cell. And then when one security guy says to the other guy, who I didn't know, that's where he belongs. There is nothing that you can do for these people. When
Mm.
he said that, all of a sudden the guy stopped in his track, turned around, looked at me in the cell, and he said to the cops that were there, "Give me the kid." So they took me out. They dragged me. I thought they were taking me to some room to beat the hell out of me. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
They dragged me into the Yankee locker room. You know, all of a sudden I'm walking in and you see these beautiful, bright pinstripe white uniforms. And I'm saying, "Oh my God." And the guy yells out, "Pete, give him a uniform. He's going to work off some damages." And so the guy made me the bat boy that night.
That
And
same night.
that same night, I was the bat boy for the New York Yankees. And that guy was the guy that had just purchased the Yankees, George Steinbrenner.
Right.
And
Wow.
he would in turn be my long-term angel, per se. A tough, difficult man, but when it came to helping people, especially people like me, especially people who didn't have, he was just there was just another, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde situation,
Hmm.
you know, because he couldn't do enough for us, okay, for us.
Hmm.
He was just unbelievable. He wasn't afraid to cross the street to go into the neighborhood to see what was going on.
Right.
He wasn't afraid to go into a Spanish restaurant and have some rice and beans and see the people go crazy screaming, "El jefe está aquí, el jefe está aquí, the chief is here, the boss is here."
Hmm.
You know, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Do you think you knew him in such a different way than most people? I mean, listen, to the outside world, the most that we've seen of George Steinbrenner is how he was portrayed on Seinfeld, right? Besides real, Yankees fans that has followed who he was. So to you, can you explain what he was like, as a whole and how you saw him?
He was he was the boss. Hey, working at Yankee Stadium, he was the boss, and people feared him. Okay, people feared him. It was like watching a Bronx Tale, and Sonny would always say, I know the kid said, is it better to be liked, or is it better to be loved, or is it better to be feared? And that was the whole emphasis of him, because people feared him that worked there,
Right.
but a lot of people did love him,
Hmm.
and he knew his power. He knew who he was, but he also knew how to open his heart when he had to. Okay. Like, I was embarrassed because all of his friends were Ivy League, Yale, Dartmouth, you name it, Notre Dame. And I didn't go to college.
Mm.
I went for a semester and bailed, and so I'm in a meeting with all of his Ivy League friends who he was throwing a little party to. I was embarrassed to be in there. So I was just looking down on the floor, and he noticed that, and he says, Negron, put your head up. Put your head up.
No.
And then he says, don't you understand that all of these assholes in here could never graduate from the college that you graduated from? And I'm looking at him like he's nuts. And he says, yeah, you graduated from the University of Steinbrenner, and these guys could never graduate from there.
Wow.
And that was a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And he always gave me beautiful moments like that.
Right.
Did he get tough with me a lot of times? Yes, he did. When I deserved it.
Hmm.
When I deserved it, he gave it to me.
Right.
Okay, because and you know what? And I wanted it.
Right.
Because that always told me that he cared.